I was driving through rural Appalachia a few nights ago. I'm 32 and a freelance photographer. I love capturing small towns and forgotten places. It was a cool, clear night. The trees were quiet, and my car hummed along the winding roads. Then suddenly my engine sputtered. I pulled over, feeling a chill in the air. I opened the hood and stared at the engine parts, tapping them gently. That's when I heard it, a soft, beautiful singing coming from the woods. It was strange, almost unsettling. I felt a pull toward the sound. Maybe I should find the source. I stepped away from my car. As I walked into the woods, the singing faded before growing louder again. My heart raced. What was I getting into? I noticed a flicker of light ahead. I thought someone might be using a lantern, but as I got closer, the light vanished. I stopped in my tracks, shaking my head in confusion. I took a breath and turned back, wanting to find my car. That's when I saw her, a woman standing on the side of the road. She looked lost, her hair flowing with the breeze. I pulled over and rolled my window down. "Do you need a ride?" I asked. She glanced at me. Her eyes were dark and hollow. I turned to open the door for her, and she was gone. Just like that. I was frozen, unable to understand how she vanished so quickly. A cold feeling swept over me. I remembered the stories I'd heard about this area, ghosts, spirits. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. Then I heard it. Soft laughter, like children's voices ringing out from behind the trees. They seemed to be calling my name, or at least that's what it felt like. It sounded playful, carefree. "Hey!" I called out. "Is anyone there?" My voice echoed, but all I heard was silence. The darkness pressed in around me as I looked around. No children were there. I felt panic rising inside me. What was happening? I needed to get back to my car. As I turned, I felt the weight of something watching me. That's when I noticed the flicker of light again deeper in the trees. The urge to explore grew stronger, but something inside me screamed to run. I hurried back toward the road, my heart pounding. I knew something wasn't right. As I reached my car, I heard the laughter again, echoing hauntingly through the woods. My blood ran cold. I felt trapped between driving away and staying to uncover whatever mystery lurked out there. Something was waiting for me in the woods, and I had a growing dread that this wasn't over yet. The night air felt thicker as I climbed back into my car. I slammed the door, locking it firmly, as if that simple action could shield me from whatever was out there. Shaking, I turned the key in the ignition, hoping the engine would roar to life. Instead, it sputtered again, leaving me in anxious silence. I glanced back at the dark expanse of trees, the sound of laughter still lingering in my ears. It was not just laughter. It felt more like a promise, playful, yet eerie. I quickly connected my phone to the car's Bluetooth, the familiar connection bringing a sense of comfort as I scrolled through my playlist for something upbeat. I needed a distraction. Just as I finally found a song, a sharp knock on my back window made me jump. I spun around, my heart racing again. A boy stood there, perhaps 12 years old, his face pale as the moonlight illuminated it. He wore tattered clothes that looked like they had seen better days. His eyes were wide, glistening with an unsettling gleam. "Help me," he said in a whisper, voice barely breaking the silence outside. "They're coming." "Who?" I asked, still firmly seated inside the car, feeling small and trapped. My instincts screamed at me to run, but there was something about his frightened expression that pulled me toward him. Before he could answer, he spun around and pointed into the darkness beyond the trees. "They know that you're here. You shouldn't have come," he hissed, his voice shaking. All at once, chills crawled down my spine. What had I stumbled into? I opened the car door slightly, but kept one foot planted inside. "You need to leave. It's not safe," I warned him, trying to sound more confident than I felt. He shook his head and stepped back, his expression shifting from panic to something more desperate. "They want you to follow. You can't stay in the light," he insisted, stepping closer to my vehicle but keeping a cautious distance. "It's a trap." A sudden rustling behind him drew my attention, and I felt my breath hitch. Shadows moved in the trees, flickering like shadows from a fire. The laughter rose once again, louder, more chaotic than before. It felt like the forest itself was alive, dancing with joy as the boy cowered near my car. I didn't want to believe him, but the evening's events rushed back through my mind, ghostly figures, the strange singing, the feeling of being watched. My gut twisted. I needed to act. "Get in," I said urgently, ready to pull away and find safety. The boy hesitated, as if my invitation terrified him even more. "Please, just get in." He darted toward my passenger door, but then lingered, looking past me toward the shadows emerging from the woods. Panic surged through me as I realized this was no ordinary boy. He was part of something haunting, something sinister. Before I could process it fully, he glanced back at me with a final pleading look, then bolted back into the woods. "You can't escape," he called back, his voice trailing off into the more oppressive laughter that echoed in the night. I watched in horror as he disappeared, my heart thudding in my chest. I had to go. I didn't know who or what was coming for me, but one thing was clear. I was not alone out here. As the laughter faded into the distance, I slammed the car door shut, my hands trembling on the steering wheel as I turned the key. But before the engine could roar to life, darkness enveloped me completely, and everything went silent. I held my breath, pressing the key harder into the ignition. The engine sputtered one last time before it finally caught. Thankfully, the low rumble echoed throughout the car, shattering the silence that had taken over. I pulled the gear shift into drive with urgency, but before I could press down on the accelerator, a loud thud hit the hood of my car. My stomach dropped. I stared out through the windshield, and the breath caught in my throat. A figure stood at the front of my vehicle. Moonlight illuminated a young girl, maybe 10 years old, with matted hair and clothes that were just as torn as the boy's. Her eyes were wide open, fixated on me, and her mouth turned up in a sweet yet unsettling smile. "Won't you come play?" she asked, her voice sweet, but laced with an edge that sent chills down my spine. A pulse of cold fear washed over me. "What do you want?" I shot back, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I didn't want to make any sudden moves that might provoke whatever was happening outside. "It's dark," she replied simply, tilting her head as if looking over my shoulder. "You can't get away until you play." I knew I should ignore her, but my curiosity clawed at me. "Play what?" I asked, though I regretted it immediately. "Hide and seek," she suggested, voice now almost a sing-song, but it felt more like a taunt. "You have to find us before we find you." My heart raced. I didn't want to play their twisted game. I wanted to escape, to drive far away from this nightmare. Just as I considered my options, I heard laughter again, muffled but growing nearer. The girl's smile widened, revealing a glimpse of panic in her eyes as she glanced back into the dark woods. "I can't hide if you don't play," she said with a pleading tone, her eerie smile remaining. "No, I'm leaving," I shouted, my instincts screaming that I needed to get out of there now. I pressed down on the accelerator, preparing to veer around her. But as soon as the car moved even an inch, the girl darted to the side, vanishing into the shadows as though she'd blended in seamlessly with the darkness. I couldn't think. I could only react. I slammed the car into reverse, feeling the jolt shoot through me as I backed out toward the road. But just as I turned the wheel, something collided with the driver's side door, rattling the entire car. I froze. The girl was back, now standing on my driver's side, but behind her stood shadows, fleeting figures flitting in and out of view. "They're coming!" she shrieked, pointing into the darkness. I didn't have time to process what I was seeing. I slammed the gear shift into drive again and accelerated hard. The car lurched forward, tires squealing against the gravel. I could hear the laughter rising behind me, echoing in the night. But the road ahead wasn't clear. Trees blurred past, and the shadows seemed to shift, merging together into one massive web of terror. My hands were slick with sweat, heart pounding as I peered into the rear-view mirror. The figures were not following, but I could feel their presence closing in. Then came the realization, twisting in my gut. I needed to find somewhere safe, a light, or else I might never escape this twisted game they played. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. Just when I thought I could breathe again, I saw something in the distance, a flicker of light breaking through the thick trees. Hope ignited inside me. That's when I saw it. The light was ahead, shining through the branches like a beacon. I pushed the gas pedal harder, desperate to reach it. With every moment the laughter faded, but unease lingered in my gut. The shadows still lurked on the fringes of my vision, ready to reach out and pull me back. As I approached, I could see it was a small, weathered shack standing alone beside the road. There were no other cars, no signs of life. It looked abandoned. But hope urged me onward. I needed to see if anyone was inside. Maybe someone could help me, or at least give me a place to hide. I parked and killed the engine, the sudden silence almost deafening. With a glance around, I noted that the shadows were still there, bouncing around the edges of the dim light, as if they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I grabbed my phone, but the battery was dead. Great. Just what I needed. I stepped out of the car, the floorboards creaking beneath my weight. The night air was damp and chilly. I took a deep breath and moved toward the shack, each step causing gravel to crunch beneath my shoes. The door was slightly ajar, swinging in the gentle breeze. "Hello?" I called out as I stepped inside, the wood floor groaning underfoot. The smell of mildew hung thick in the air, and the sparse furniture cast long shadows in the weak light of an oil lamp flickering on a dusty table. I scanned the room, looking for any signs of life. A few mismatched chairs were piled in a corner, and a rickety bookshelf lined one wall, filled with moth-eaten books. Except for the faint glow, there were no signs of anyone else. "Is anyone here?" I asked again, impatience and fear tightening my throat. My heart raced, waiting for a response that didn't come. I turned to leave when I heard a sound from the back, a soft whisper, almost melodic, mixed with the faint sound of laughter. I hesitated, icy tendrils of dread creeping back in. Should I investigate? I felt lost. The game flashing back in my mind, they wanted me to play. But I couldn't ignore the pull of curiosity. I moved toward the sound, stepping carefully through the small, dark hallway leading to the back. The light from the lamp faded, swallowed by the shadows. As I approached the end, I could see a glimmer through a crack in the door. I peered inside, but what I saw made my stomach churn. It was a small gathering of shadowy figures, the same ones from outside. They were huddled together, whispering in muffled tones, their voices blending into a chilling symphony. The girl from earlier was among them, now eerily still, watching me with wide, eager eyes. I stumbled back, heart pounding wildly. They were waiting for me to join them, to play, to lose myself in whatever nightmarish game they had planned. Suddenly the door burst open and the girl stood before me, blocking my retreat. "Don't you want to play?" she asked, tilting her head in that unsettling way again. I took a step back, realizing there was no escape. Just as I prepared to bolt, I heard laughter echo again, this time more insistent and close. The shadows shifted around me, closing in like predators encircling their prey. That's when I noticed the torn, crumpled paper on the floor near the door. It was a map, marked with strange symbols and routes, and next to it a photo, a family photo, one I recognized, the faces of the missing children plastered across the front. My breath hitched. I found out who they were, but that just made it worse. I couldn't breathe. The photo felt like a weight in my hand, dragging me down into a darkness I was desperate to escape. Those were the faces I'd seen on every missing children's poster in town, smiling so brightly, yet now frozen in a horror I could sense lurking just outside the shack. The girl's laughter echoed again, and I turned my head just in time to see her shift. The shadows seemed to thicken, warping her outline into something grotesque, a malleable figure that didn't quite belong. Panic surged through me. I had to get away. "Move!" I shouted, pushing past her, fear fueling my every step. I couldn't let them catch me, couldn't let them pull me into that gathering again. My foot slammed against the doorframe, knocking it open wider. I bolted into the cool night air. Outside, the shadows clung to the ground, twisting and flickering like restless spirits. I fought my way to the car, heart pounding against my chest. I glanced over my shoulder. The girl was still standing in the doorway, her smile too wide, her eyes gleaming with a strange light. They were after me. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, the metal slipping from my grasp. Every second felt like an eternity as the laughter morphed into taunting whispers, beckoning me back to the shack. My breath came in sharp gasps. I needed to focus. I had to get away from here. Finally, I found the keys and plunged them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, shattering the suffocating silence. I threw the car into reverse, my eyes darting to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the shadows chasing me down. Instead, it was just the darkness, the late-night fog wrapping around the trees. I slammed the car into drive and sped forward, tires kicking gravel as I tore down the dismal road. But as I glanced back once more, that sickening feeling returned. I swore I saw the girl standing there, hands on her hips, looking at me like I was a fly trying to escape a web. With each mile away from the shack, I forced a breath to steady my nerves. I needed to put distance between us. I needed to understand what had just happened. The map cluttering my thoughts. How did these kids end up here? What was the connection? And what was their game? But the further I drove, the more eerie quiet enveloped me. Then everything felt wrong. The road signs I passed were familiar, yet each turned into something I didn't recognize. I should have been heading back to town, but the landscape shifted, twisted. Trees loomed larger, their branches clawing over the road like skeletal fingers. I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. Dark figures darting among the trees, shadows blending with the night. Terrified, I pressed the gas pedal harder, desperate to escape whatever this was. That's when I spotted it. A crude new sign swinging in the breeze. It read, "Welcome to the Lost Hollow." My heart stopped. I remembered the stories my grandmother told me about Lost Hollow, the town that didn't exist on maps, swallowed by the woods. I shivered, realizing the stories might not just be tales. Someone was in the car with me. The laughter filled the space and I felt an overwhelming chill, the shadows creeping inside. I gripped the wheel tighter, urgency rising in me. I had to find a way out. But before I could decide what to do next, the radio crackled, and a voice, low and distorted, whispered, "You thought you could escape." I squinted into the night, adrenaline surging. I wasn't done playing these games, not yet. But what would be required of me next? The car jolted as I hit a patch of gravel, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. The voice had stirred something deep within me, fear mixing with confusion. There had to be an explanation. I needed to snap out of this. I glanced at the dashboard. The clock flickered, the time seeming to freeze, or maybe it was just me. My grip tightened on the wheel as the shadows pressed closer, wrapping around the car like a thick fog. I couldn't let them in. Whatever they were, I couldn't let them take control. The road ahead twisted, narrowing until it was barely 2 lanes wide. I spotted headlights behind me, their brightness cutting through the darkness. Relief surged through me. Maybe it was a local, someone who could help me find my way back. But as they drew nearer, I saw shadows crawling in the headlights, figures writhing in the glow. My heart dropped. In a desperate attempt to maintain focus, I fumbled with the radio, trying to drown out the laughter echoing in my mind. I settled on a static station, desperate for something, anything, to ground me. And then a voice. Not the distorted one, but someone else. Soft, slow, almost soothing. If you're in trouble, turn back, it warned. Lost Hollow doesn't let you leave. It needs you. I slammed down on the brake, tires screeching against the asphalt. My thoughts spun wildly. Was this a joke? Who was playing games with me? I couldn't let fear control me. I had to get out of here. Taking a breath, I pushed back onto the gas, but the headlights faded. I whirled around, scanning the rearview mirror. Nothing. The road lay empty behind me, but ahead, strange bluish lights flickered among the trees like will-o'-the-wisps. A gut feeling churned inside me. Some part of me whispered to chase them, that maybe they were a way out, a promise of safety. The other part screamed at me to run, to keep my foot pressed down. Sensing the pull of the mysterious lights, I turned off the radio and let the silence wrap around me. Suddenly the car's engine sputtered, stalling unexpectedly. I cursed under my breath. No, not now. Panic clawed at my throat. I tried to restart it, but the engine coughed and spat. The lights danced just ahead, and I was rooted to the spot. Then I heard it, a soft knocking on the passenger window. My breath hitched, and I turned slowly. There was a child, maybe 8 years old, with wild hair and dirt-streaked skin, standing in the shadows. "Help me," she whispered, voice cracking, each word heavy with sorrow. Instinct snapped into action. I wasn't about to get fooled again. My foot itched to hit the gas, but when I looked deeper into her eyes, I saw something different, something familiar. "Why are you here?" I shouted, but the question felt futile. I knew what they wanted. She tilted her head, a sorrowful smile creeping across her face. "You have to come with us." And just like that, the cold seeped back into the car, dragging me closer to the edge. My hands trembled over the steering wheel. Before I could respond, the lights among the trees flickered and vanished. It felt like a promise and a threat. The shadows closed in again, and I was left with only the banging in my chest. I had to make a decision. Then, the car's engine roared back to life, sputtering like a warning. I slammed it into gear, heart racing, and bolted forward, breaking through the darkness. But the girl's laughter echoed in my ears. It mixed with the whispers, almost inviting me back. Up ahead, the path forked. Left led towards the lights, right to uncertainty. I had to choose, but either way I felt the shadows reaching for me. I pushed the accelerator harder, praying for escape. The engine roared as I veered right, steering into the unknown. The darkness thickened, swallowing the headlights like they were nothing. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The laughter of the girl lingered, echoing with each turn. What had I just seen? I glanced at the dashboard. The flickering clock had stopped. Had I lost time? Panic twisted my stomach. I thought about turning back, but something held me there, glued to this unnerving path. As I pressed on, the trees closed in. Their branches reached out like claws, creating a natural archway. The bluish lights were gone, but the shadows felt alive, swirling, pulsing, waiting for me to falter. Every bump in the road sent shocks through the car. Every sway hinted at something unsaid. Then I saw it, a faint glow at the edge of the road. I slowed down, curiosity fighting against caution. It was a signpost, but the words were worn and faded. I leaned closer, hoping to read them, but the moment I stepped out of the car, the air thickened, stinging my eyes. The cold bit into my skin. I pulled my jacket tighter and squinted at the sign. "Welcome to Lost Hollow," it read. Letters faded but ominous. My heart sank. This was the place warned about. The very name whispered on the radio. Suddenly, I heard rustling. I turned quickly, half expecting the girl to reappear, but instead a figure detached itself from the shadows. It was a man, tall and gaunt, with a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. His voice broke through the silence, deep and gravelly. "You shouldn't be here. Who are you?" My voice wavered, but I tried to stand my ground. "I'm the keeper of this place." He stepped forward, face still hidden. "You've strayed too far." I couldn't manage a reply. My instincts screamed at me to retreat. I backed up slowly, my eyes darting to the car. But the man moved closer, and I felt like a cornered animal. "You'll regret turning back," he said, the corners of his mouth twisting into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "They're hungry for company in Lost Hollow." Frantically, I glanced around. I could feel the shadows thickening, creeping closer, and the weight of their presence was suffocating. Before I knew it, I had turned and was sprinting back to the car. My heart raced, and adrenaline coursed through me, fueling my panic. Just before I reached the car, I turned to look at him one last time. The man was still standing there, watching me with a gaze that felt more unsettling than comforting. I jumped into the driver's seat and slammed the door, fumbling with the keys. My hands were shaking, making it impossible to find the ignition. Then I saw it. His arm was raised, pointing down the road. I hesitated, confusion mixing with fear. What was down that way? But the second I shoved the key into the ignition, the car roared back to life, drowning out my thoughts. I pulled out, tires screeching once more. As I drove, I glanced back in the rearview mirror. The man was gone, but shadows shifted in the trees behind me. My thoughts were a whirlwind. How was I still here? What was this place doing to me? I pressed down on the gas, desperate to put distance between me and Lost Hollow, but the road began to twist again, spiraling deeper into the unknown. That's when I saw it. A wooden bridge ahead, leading into complete darkness. The bridge loomed in front of me, old and creaky, like the mouth of a waiting beast. I hesitated just before the entrance, my breath catching in my throat. The only sound was the wind whispering through the trees, and for a moment I considered turning back. But the thought of the tall man with the piercing gaze pushed me forward. As the tires hit the wooden planks, each bump reverberated through the chassis like a warning. The car groaned, and I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Peering into the dark ahead, I could see nothing but the thick blackness. It felt alive, almost as if it were reaching for me. Halfway across, I braved a glance into the rearview mirror. My heart sank again. The fog had rolled in, thick and heavy, shrouding the entrance behind me. It was as if the bridge was a barrier, keeping me from going back. A rustling noise broke the silence. I turned my head, scanning the shadows hidden beneath the deck of the bridge. My mind raced back to the man's warning. "They're hungry for company." I shuddered, wishing I could shove those words out of my mind. Without warning, a figure darted across the bridge ahead of me. I slammed on the brakes, my heart racing. The headlights caught a glimpse of something small and pale before it disappeared into the dark. Was that the girl? The laughter echoed again, chilling me to my core. I threw the car into reverse, wanting to escape, but the rear tires spun uselessly. The bridge felt like it was closing in, trapping me in its embrace. Panic surged through me. I threw it back into drive and pressed the gas, trying to ignore the shadows swallowing everything. That's when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping on the roof of my car. My heart pounded as I glanced up. Nothing. Just the creeping darkness staring back. I forced myself to focus on the end of the bridge. The light at the other side appeared dim but reachable, and I pressed forward. I could almost see the road continuing past the bridge. Freedom was just a few yards away. Closer, I strained to catch a glimpse of what lay beyond. Was it the familiar road leading me home, or was it something worse? Then suddenly the tapping turned into frantic scratching. I could feel it now. Something was on the roof, shifting, moving in the shadows. I screamed, the sound piercing the suffocating silence. My foot pressed down on the accelerator as I made a final shove forward. The car shot out of the bridge and into the open air. I didn't dare look back. Instead, I focused on the road ahead, heart racing, hands trembling. I was free, or so I thought. But as I sped away, a figure materialized on the shoulder of the road, illuminated by my headlights. It was the girl, her expression eerily calm amidst the chaos. She simply raised a finger, pointing straight toward my car. And that's when I felt it. The weight pressing down on me again, enveloping me in an impossible darkness. I pressed down on the gas, desperate to escape whatever force was closing in on me, but the girl's gaze felt like a hook, anchoring me in place. I barely registered the way her hair fluttered in the wind as I drove past. In the rearview mirror, her silhouette faded quickly, but a treacherous sense of foreboding lingered. The road ahead was dark, twisting, and eventually descended into a thick line of trees. I glanced at my gas gauge. Half a tank. Good. I could keep going, right? I just needed to shake the feeling that someone, or something, was chasing me. I swerved around a bend and suddenly my headlights flickered. First, a dimming, then full darkness. The engine sputtered as I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart racing again. I sat there for a moment, the silence suffocating. I held my breath, listening, but the only sound was the rustling of leaves. Come on, I muttered under my breath, banging the steering wheel. What now? I tried the ignition again. Nothing, just a pathetic click. It wasn't long before I felt the air shift around me. Chills crawled up my spine. I glanced out the driver's side window and saw a faint light approach through the trees. I blinked hard, unsure if I was imagining it. But there it was, a small lantern, bobbing as if carried by a child. My heart sank. The girl. She was coming this way. I shuffled in my seat, not wanting to believe it. I considered throwing the car door open and running. Yet my legs felt glued to the floor, fear gripping me. The light drew closer, illuminating a small figure in a white dress, tattered and frayed at the edges. She seemed ethereal, floating just above the ground as she walked. Her expression remained calm, eyes locked onto mine, unblinking. And then, she stopped. That's when I noticed another figure. Not the girl, but a boy standing just behind her, looking much like she did. His hair was damp and tangled, his face smudged with dirt. This was no innocent sight. It sent a jolt of panic through my veins. "Help us!" The girl's voice rang out, soft but clear. The chill in her words twisted inside me. "Help who?" I shouted, half out of fear, half confusion. I didn't want to get out of the car, didn't want to engage, but the boy stepped forward, and the lights surrounding them flickered. "We just want to play," he said, his tone almost inviting. I pressed my back against the seat, heart pounding harder as I scanned my surroundings for an escape. Was this real? What were they? Just manifestations of my fear? Or something more? I wanted to scream, to drive away, but the sight of their calmed expressions held me captive. "Don't leave us," the girl pleaded, taking one slow step forward. A sudden realization hit me. It wasn't the girl I had seen earlier. This was something else entirely. I could feel it. The shadows around them seemed to stretch and pull, trying to reach into my car as I tried to keep my breathing steady. And just like that, the light flickered out, plunging me into blackness. I was left in the oppressive silence, heart racing, alone with my thoughts. Then, someone knocked on my window. I jumped, my heart racing again. Somehow I could feel the faint pressure of eyes on me from outside, and that primal instinct to bolt surged as I peered cautiously out the window. The darkness wrapped around the car like a suffocating blanket, but through the dim glow of my dashboard lights, the two kids stood there, faces illuminated and unchanged. "Please," the girl said, her voice softer this time, though still laced with an eerie charm. "We just want to play with you." Something twisted inside me, fear mingled with a strange, painful longing, a desperate need to understand what had happened. But I couldn't give in. "What do you want?" I managed to croak, my voice barely rising above a whisper. "Come out," the boy echoed, tilting his head to the side like a curious bird. The shadows deepened around them, and I felt the familiar cold creep back into the car, as if the night itself was reaching out to consume me. "Why should I?" I shot back, my voice trembling. As compelling as their soft voices were, every fiber of my being screamed for me to stay inside this metal shell, to not let the softness of their words deceive me. "What if I told you we know the way out?" The girl chimed in, her eyes reflecting a sudden flash of mischief. "It's just beyond the trees." A shudder ran through me. I didn't want to believe them, but everything inside me still ached to escape this horror. "You're lying," I said, shaking my head vehemently, but as I spoke, doubt crept into my mind. Hadn't I already tried every avenue? What if they really did hold the key to my escape? The boy took a step closer, his tiny figure barely casting a shadow, and the light flickered back to life. "We can show you, but you have to trust us." I hesitated, wondering if it would be worth it to emerge from the cocoon of safety. What if stepping outside meant plunging back into the very nightmare I fought so hard to avoid? But as that thought crossed my mind, another part of me flickered with curiosity and desperation. Maybe they were my ticket out. Fighting back my fear, I took a deep breath, opened the car door, and stepped out into the night. The cool air hit me hard, and I instantly regretted my choice. The darkness swayed around the shadows of the kids, twirling like a living entity, forcing me to remain vigilant. "Follow us," the girl insisted, her voice now tinged with excitement, and together they turned, heading back into the tree line that almost felt too welcoming. Reluctantly I followed, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. As we stepped deeper into the woods, I felt the laughter rising in the branches, an echo that tangled within the trees. The laughter didn't feel playful anymore. It morphed into something sinister, a cacophony of lost souls entwined with my own fear. "See?" the boy called back, glancing over his shoulder with a glimmer of encouragement in his glazed eyes. "We're almost there." I continued following their thin forms, glancing at my surroundings as branches clawed at my clothes. The more I walked, the deeper I sank into an uneasy familiarity. I began to recognize shadows flitting just beyond my peripheral vision, something chasing me, looming ever closer. "Keep going," the girl urged, her voice pealing through the woods while the laughter escalated into a haunting cry. My heart raced as dread clutched at my chest. The world spun, and all I wanted was to escape the grip of Lost Hollow's lascivious lure. Finally, I broke through the dense canopy into a clearing, and the air shifted. Suddenly, everything changed. The ambiance felt lighter, almost refreshing. In the center lay a grand old tree, twisted and with branches that twisted out like ghostly fingers. Beneath it was an ancient stone archway, bathed in a soft silver light. "We made it!" the girl exclaimed, her joy palpable as she gestured toward the arch. "This is the way out." But even as hope surged within me, a deep sense of foreboding settled like the thick fog lifting off the ground. I moved closer, hesitating again. Why had I followed them? What was waiting on the other side? "Come on," the boy shouted, his laughter sweeping through the air. "It's safe." But the closer I got to the archway, the deeper the shadows felt, and behind me, the familiar laughter echoed. Children calling out, beckoning me to turn back. I froze. caught between the urge to escape the darkness and the horrifying seduction of the light. "What's beyond this arch?" I asked, glancing at my unexpected guides. Their expressions remained mysterious, too eager, too bright against the encroaching dark. "Just freedom, just play," the girl pleaded. But I could hear the laughter growing louder again, and it resonated deep within my very bones, awakening something in me I didn't want to confront. "Wait," I said, and suddenly all their smiles vanished into stoic expressions. "What if you're wrong? What if this place never lets anyone go?" Before they could answer, the world shifted around me once more, and my fingers fluttered to the edges of my resolve. How easily could I slip through that archway, claiming whatever awaited me? I imagined the chains of despair would shatter if I could just reach it. But in that moment, I felt the shadows shift, flicking between me and the boys. They watched me, waiting, and more than just children. They appeared to be shadows, the living echoes of my own fears, entangled in the fabric of this haunted night. I took a step back, my breath hitching in fear. "Never let go" echoed through my mind. And just like that, I turned around, bolting back into the woods, the laughter ringing louder, taunting me, insisting I stay. Each stride felt heavier than the last. I felt their shadows mingling with mine, creeping closer as I raced through the branches. The laughter morphed into cries, begging and plaintive. But deep down, a thread of determination flickered inside me. I didn't know what awaited me beyond the shadows, but I was no longer going to let them dictate my fate. I had to find my way out. Just ahead, the tree line began to thin. Suddenly, daylight broke softly through the branches, igniting the horizon ahead in hues I thought I'd never see again. I could feel the shadows watching, but they began to slow, inching back toward the darkness I was leaving behind. With one final push, I raced into the light. The moment I broke free, the weight of the night lifted, evaporating like morning fog, wrapping around me in a comforting embrace. But as I looked back, the shadows remained, hovering in the trees, casting fleeting glimpses of those lost souls. Even in freedom, I realized they were a part of me, a lingering echo of the darkness I'd narrowly escaped. I didn't dare turn around again. I didn't know how far I'd truly come or what it all meant, but I moved forward, embracing the uncertainty, leaving Lost Hollow behind. Or did I? Because somewhere deep inside I knew. I still think about it sometimes. The kids, the laughter, the eerie call to play, and I wonder if part of me still lingers there, waiting for a foolish soul to wander into the woods once more.